What is up, fight fans? I am Jason Burgos for Sportsnaut and Ringside Intel, and I have the great pleasure of being joined by the first man to hold traditional boxing titles in boxing and bare-knuckle boxing. He has previously fought boxing stars like Miguel Cotto, the Charlo brothers, Canelo Alvarez. He is now the new BKFC welterweight champion, and that is the one and only Austin Trout. Senor, no doubt. Thank you so much for the time today.
Hey, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
So, BKFC adding a proven former champion from boxing brings a lot of prestige to the brand, much more so than when like Paulie Malignaggi came in, because you want to be active in the company. This isn't a one-off thing for you. I'm sure like there's some boxers probably that look down on bare knuckle and stuff like that. How did the promotion go about selling you on competing for them and made you think, okay, I want to do this? Or did it simply come down to they gave you better offers than boxing did?
Um, it came down to it was better offers, but really they didn't have to convince me. I was already kind of like, in my head, it's like if they gave me a good offer, I'm down. I would be down to do that. You know what I mean? It didn't take much convincing. Um, and again too, Nelson, he believed I could bring something to the company. And I think the fight with Diego, I think Dave saw what it could do, and I'm thankful for the opportunity for sure, because I like this shit, to be honest. It's fun, you know what I mean? I get to do more, and you exercise that warrior spirit.
Has there been like any? I'm not sure, it's different stuff like that, but kind of like any blowback from people inside like the traditional boxing industry for like switching sides, so to speak, or are people blowing up your phone like, look, Austin's doing it, he's doing well, I want to do it too, maybe he's showing the way.
I've never received any blowback. In fact, um, most boxers ain't down to do the bare knuckle. It takes a certain person to be a fighter as it is, and then it
Yeah.
takes even more certain type of fighter to be a bare knuckle fighter. So it was more of like respect. You know what I mean? You crazy or you know what I mean? Um, but I did receive some word that Jamal Charlo was interested in coming bare knuckle to fight for my belt, I think.
Oh.
Um, so I think we're gonna start seeing some things. Some of these boxers coming over here, but I would love to get some of that action on this side.
And that's a perfect segue. Kind of that's where I was going, because I talked to David Feldman a couple times the last month, and we talked about how there's going to be a lot of new investment coming into the company, a lot of big money. They're going to go on a free agent spending spree. He's talking to boxers. He's going to bring in some boxers. Who do you think? Because you know both sports well now. Who would you, along with a guy like Jamel, who would else do you feel in the traditional boxing realm would be good fits in bare knuckle? Probably could do it, and kind of like free agency in other sports, would you kind of help BKFC kind of recruit guys and big names from other sports to bring them to bare knuckle?
You know who would be a monster in bare knuckle? Terrence Crawford.
Oh.
Terrence Crawford would be and he got that wrestling background too, so to be able
Mm-hmm.
to hold his head, just manhandle. Terrence Crawford would be a monster. Nagy Aguilera, who's a little not as well known of a boxer, but in this bare knuckle game, he would be a better bare knuckle fighter than a boxer. And he was a pretty damn good boxer. You know what I mean? Mike Perez, he was one of the Cuban fighters. Again, I believe he's cruiserweight. He would be a monster in this bare knuckle game. There's a lot, there's a lot of guys that weren't necessarily at the top of the boxing, but would, I think, beat a lot of top boxers in bare knuckle.
Mm. All right. Obviously, you have had a lot of success so far in your two BKFC fights, pair dominant wins. As a man that's had success at the highest levels of boxing now in bare knuckle as well, in what ways does, cause especially going to the people from maybe from traditional boxing that can make that jump over, in what ways was bare knuckle a lot easier for you? And opened up a lot of things for you offensively, defensively compared to traditional boxing? And in what ways was it tougher? Did it, was there a learning curve on the ways bare knuckle differ from the traditional boxing?
No, there was definitely a learning curve, and I'm still learning and really only getting better at it. The clinching, the holding, hitting could be a big problem, and it's what I think hurt a lot of boxers, that they just tried to box their way to, to a win.
Mm.
Whereas you have to fight. And in both of my bare knuckle fights, what happened was the time that we got engaged in the inside fighting, I won those bouts, so to speak. And they didn't want to do that no more. I dropped Luis when it was in an exchange on the inside. Every time he was to rush in, I was able to step around and run him into something.
Mm.
And that's what I'm gonna do until someone can figure out how to stop that. Um, and there was definitely a learning curve, and like I said, I'm only getting better as far as being able to manipulate using the hands to push and hold and grab and manipulate the body as such. But I feel like I'm pretty good at it, and I got some pretty good coaches that are helping me get better at it. So every fight is just gonna get better.
Yeah, and as a person that knows the boxing game so well, understandably, BKFC has brought in a lot of MMA names, and they've been great for them. And it pulls from like the MMA fan base, and they've done really well with that. But it's different. What they're working on for so much of their career isn't strictly boxing. They're working on all striking. So when you've been in there you've been in there two well-known former MMA fighters, especially like a guy like Diego Sanchez. While they might be respected for what they can do in MMA, what's some of the little things that maybe fight fans may not notice that MMA guys do or don't know that boxers know from years of boxing training in terms of technical stuff?
It's really not. It's really not a secret, and it's really not anything advanced. It's merely the jab
Hmm.
and footwork.
Okay.
That's it. That's the biggest difference. They don't jab, and they don't know how to move any other way besides forward and backwards. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And even in Luis, when he was, stancing on the outside, all that side work doesn't mean anything when you're out there. But on the inside, all he knew how to do was go forward. And when I stepped around, he was lost. He didn't know where I
Yeah.
was. Um, and I guess it's not. I mean, I don't want to give out all my secrets, but again, it's not really. It wasn't really a secret,
Yeah.
and it's not really that big of a advanced move. It's just simple as a jab and footwork. And then I think even if they try starting now to figure it out, you know, I'm working on my footwork every day, and I've been doing it for the last 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So catch up.
I want to get your thoughts on the state of boxing because now this kind of celebrity boxing stuff has become more bigger than I'm sure a lot of people expected, as well as kind of like these exhibition fights that Floyd's been making money and a name off of kind of doing later in his career. What is your overall feeling about the current health of traditional boxing? Is the celebrity element kind of a good thing? It brings a unique attention, it brings maybe fans that weren't watching before because of the Paul brothers and stuff like that. Is it bad? Is boxing falling behind things like MMA and the UFC in ways in your mind?
In ways, yes. I mean, I just say boxing is it's had the ups and
Yeah,
downs.
yeah,
I believe right now it's on the downside of boxing. But one thing about boxing, it never goes away. I remember when the last kind of real low for boxing was when I think maybe 2008, 2009, when it was like just the Eastern European takeover. We had no good heavyweights. Um, but even, I think the celebrity boxing might be what keeps boxing alive until
mm,
it makes its resurgence.
yeah,
Like you said, the celebrity boxing is bringing uh, viewership that never would watch boxing
yeah.
before. Because I mean, typically people who watch and follow the Logan brothers are probably not the type to watch somebody train and go box. So and then also the fact that the Paul brothers are putting real fighters on and
Yeah,
allowing them to make good money. Some people have been paid better than they've ever been paid
yeah.
before fighting under the Paul brothers. So, I think they are good for boxing. And he's trying to do good things for boxing. I saw him at the WBA convention, and he's trying to talk about getting some type of pension, some type of retirement. How we can let some of these fighters, stay broke and bravo. I don't know if he ended up doing it, but he's trying.
In a way, do you feel like because there is that the element of BKFC that really has it pulls from MMA fans and stuff like that, and it has a style, and that's a growing market. And and boxing maybe is an older fan base. Do you feel in a way, as a person that now has kind of done boxing and bare knuckle, should traditional boxing, should boxing outlets and promotions, should they kind of like, you know, nurture bare knuckle as like a just another element of boxing, and kind of the expansion of the sport, because they probably have a younger fan base, BKFC and bare knuckle, because of that? Should kind of boxing like bring it in and say, yes, you're part of us, and not kind of push it away like, oh, it's too bloody?
No, that would be brilliant of boxing to do, because MMA is not really trying to grab at BKFC as their own, and
Yeah.
boxing seems to try to push them towards the
Yep.
MMA, and it's like, no, man, look, it's gonna be standing on its own, regardless if MMA or boxing wants to claim them as their own. But for boxing, who needs to get with the younger crowd, and I've always said they need to take a page out of the UFC marketing, or how they build up the fighters, and they make these guys bigger than life, and where
Yeah.
boxing is turned it kind of to like the record company, where they want artists already developed. They want the fighters to come with the swag and the following and the and the perfect record, instead of doing the developing themselves.
Yeah.
So BKFC is like that too. They made every single person up from the bottom of the card to the top. They made them feel and look like they were all kings. What I mean, champions.
And I
So
was
definitely they should. That's a great idea. Boxing should do that.
and I was gonna I was gonna ask this a little bit, but I'll go to now, because kind of what you're saying. I mean, the structure of the UFC without a doubt has its flaws, and there's fighters have complained about pay and stuff like that. But since you mentioned like boxing should really kind of go in the direction of UFC in terms of marketing and stuff like that. And you mentioned recently in a TMZ interview, like boxing has been tough for you in terms of just getting fights done. And even fans know about this. So many big fights that just can't get done. Is that sort of, in a way, something boxing should go towards? Like, it needs a league like the UFC where all the fighters are maybe under one umbrella. Maybe fights can be made easier, or like some an evolved version of that. Like, what does boxing need to kind of head in the right direction that it's not right now?
So at one point it was like, yeah, if all the fighters were under one big umbrella, right? Because there's just too many organizations,
Yeah, yeah.
too many
More
belts,
titles. Yep.
too many promoters. And all these fighters are just mixed between all these politics, and it does take a long time to get things done. But I was like, that's not just, it's hard to make that happen. How's that gonna happen? Well, I mean, the way that boxing is kind of dwindling down, whoever's left last will have all the fighters, because there's no more TV left
Yeah.
or nowhere to fight. All the fighters are gonna go to that last person. So maybe that is what it'll take, is be the last man standing and be able to make the fights that that we need to see.
You mentioned in that same TMZ interview, I mentioned that there's possibly hopes of chasing the BKFC featherweight title, maybe lightweight title, maybe even middleweight title. If you were able to achieve some of those goals, become a 2-3 division champion in BKFC, this growing fast kind of growing sport, which is an old sport made new, would that surpass being a WBA champion for so long in boxing for you?
Well, you never forget your first time.
Yeah.
Um, and for that, and the history with that belt, I don't know if anything can surpass that. And don't get me wrong, it was in Mexico, and on somebody else's turf, and yeah, I don't know if it could pass that up, because that was just a good, my own Rocky moment. Um, which I did again, this other night, and I'll do it again, because I'm sure I'll be the underdog in all these next fights today that we may have lined up. But um, yeah, it would be right up there with it. After all that's said and done, 2, 3 weight champions, and I can see it now. all the belts on. It's gonna be heavy, but I can see it now. Um, and that would definitely solidify, my stamp in combat sports. I should definitely go down. Um,
You've mentioned in other places, maybe upcoming fights for a Conor McGregor. There's a lot of people in BKFC won that fight. Eddie Alvarez, you mentioned stuff like that. Charlo, you mentioned maybe that's something that would be interesting. Is that where we're going for this next fight? Is there, now that BKFC has this investment coming in, they're signing? Is there something else you're hearing about that as your next fight, or am I kind of in the right area?
I think really all those names were just speculation, things that I maybe we can have happen. I haven't heard anything from neither of the guys. What will actually be happening. All I keep hearing from Palomino's side is rematch, like, come on, man. You don't want to do that to yourself playing. Um, but his fans are convinced that I shoved him and that wasn't his best. So I mean, Greg, I'll give him this, that he complains about his ring rust and that he was rusty, but dude had like surgery on his hand and shoulder. Like, how quick did he think he wanted to get back in the ring? I'm surprised he tried to take me on his first fight. You know what I'm saying? I thought that was poor, poor management.